Hi, welcome to It's So Friday. We're back. It's been a little while since we've been here, but we are so excited to be here today because it's December 1st. And do you know what that means? It means it's Christmas time, and you are just gonna love what we've got in store for you today. You need the candy canes for this project for holiday cheer. It's very important. Also, they make excellent candy cane finger guns. All right, so let's get down to business. We are going to be making one of our free patterns today called Stockings Stache, because everyone needs a Christmas stocking if you're celebrating Christmas, so that you can put lots of presents, well, so that Santa can put lots of presents for the good little girls and boys and adults in the room too. Now, the beauty about making your own, I almost said Christmas tree, I don't know why, stocking, is that you can customize it to your heart's delight, which means that you could go very traditional Christmas, you could go like modern sassy Christmas, you could go like cool blue, or you could do something else. You could go with donuts and sweets, or with the pet craze. You could go really crazy and go with dinosaurs, or you could go even crazier and just mix it all together and get anything your heart desires. This one is coming home to live with me. Isn't my husband lucky? These are all new collections that are shipping now or in stores now. This is our Dino Roar collection. This one is called Whiskers and Tails by Julia Williams. This is Susie's Minis. And there's a whole bunch of these cute motifs that you can't even see here because you can only pick 2-ish for your stocking, which is hard, but that's why you have to make like 10, obviously. This is from our Artisan Boutique Noel collection, and it's hard to see, but we have some amazing metallic on top of this, so it really glitters in the light. This one is from Winter's Holiday Flourish.
I don't know which one.
It's
either
Holiday
Winter's
Flourish.
Grandeur or Holiday Flourish.
And you can't really see it very well from far away, but there's some delightful fussy cutting here and here that says Merry Christmas, Season's Greetings, and the lining is really cute too. And then this last one is from our new Artisan Boutiques Northwoods collection. And this red is my favorite new Christmas boutique because it has this beautiful gold on it and again shimmers really prettily in the light. But today we decided to go with something that's just classic, very traditional, wonderful, the Grinch. And we're going to pair with our coordinating Celebrating Seuss as our trim because I think that looks quite nice. And another Celebrate Seuss for the dots for our cuff and the lining. So, run right ahead to that link right above us here and print out the pattern. It looks like this. Once you have this, you'll know you have the right pattern. Again, it's called Stocking Stache. It's free on the Robert Kaufman website. And the next thing you're going to do that's super important is you're going to cut out your pattern pieces and tape them together. It should look like a big sock. Like this. If it doesn't, then you're doing it wrong. All right. On top of the fabric that you'll need and your pattern pieces, you're also going to need a 24-inch square of batting or some scraps that are big enough to fit one stocking piece on it, and you'll need 2, one for each side, front and back. In addition, you'll need a ruler that at least reaches 17 inches. Now this one is Omni Grip, reaches 24 inches, and that is perfect for this. We're going to keep that here. You'll need a sharp rotary cutter, a pin cushion because there's a lot of layers here, candy canes for a midway snack, which I probably won't do live. And because these are quilted stockings, you can kind of decide how you're going to quilt, but this is a really great project to practice free motion quilting on, and so if you have some quilting gloves, those don't hurt. They have a little bit of grip on them, which helps you to hold that fabric and move it around. And never hurts to have a sharp pair of scissors. And depending on how you want to quilt, you're either going to need a walking foot. Well, you don't need a walking foot, but it makes your life a lot easier if you have a walking foot, or a free motion quilt foot, plus your machine that can do it all. All right, so let's get right to it. Oh, and by the way, I thought that I would do some prep for It's So Friday by printing out a list of Christmas jokes.
Oh no.
I thought I was printing out like 1, maybe 2 pages, but no, I have 9 pages of Christmas jokes. So let's get it started right here. Who is Santa's favorite singer? Any guesses? Anyone in the room?
No, who?
Elvis Presley. All right, when you're ready for another one, you let me know. I have 9 more pages. All right, to get started, you're going to have to cut out your pattern pieces. So let's clear our workspace a little bit. This is realistic, right? Moving everything to use this little piece of table. It's how my table looks at home too. Okay, if you want to make your life fairly easy, it's great to cut out these pieces at the same time. So since you need one that's this way and one that's reversed so that you don't have one side of your stocking that doesn't have the print on it, I keep my fabric layered together, wrong side to wrong side. Then I lay my pattern piece down and I cut. If you're using something with a design and you really want to get that one spot, it's nice to fussy cut. So you would want to just kind of like peek under and make sure that you have the Grinch visible, or whatever design you're featuring, visible within your seam allowances. And in these stockings, they're 1/2-inch seam allowances. The other thing to keep in mind is that your cuff is going to cover 4 inches, well, like 4.5 inches of your design. So like here, you know, if you have a bird that's like not quite complete, but you want to cover it, just keep that in mind. So don't put anything that you love right at the top of your stocking. Okay, now I think I have my Grinches fully in here, and so I'm going to cut out my pattern. Now, you could use pattern weights to keep this down, and you could pin, but if you're feeling really adventurous, you could just cut it out, just, you know, flat surface and carefully rotary cut around it, watching for all those fingers. If you're going to be doing this project with your little ones, just recommend that you do the cutting and you let them supervise and help with picking the fabrics, but not this part necessarily. And then they can come back in and help you when it's time to quilt. And maybe pin. Kids like to help pin things too. All right, so this actually goes pretty quickly. And it's not, you want to be accurate, but it's not going to be the end of the world if it's not like super, super perfect at every single side, because you have that generous seam allowance. And then you put away that fabric, because now you have your 2 pieces. Okay, now you set that aside, and you need to do the same thing with your lining fabric. So this will be my lining fabric.
And for those of you watching on Instagram, there is no link here, but you can search for this pattern on our website. It's called Stockings Stache, but Stache spelled like a mustache.
And on that note, I think we should have another Santa joke.
Yep.
Why was Santa's little helper feeling depressed?
Why?
Because he had low self-esteem. All right, on to that next piece. All right. That was really good. All right, we're gonna cut out this piece again. Just, I have those, I put my bottle of flatter and my pin cushion on the stocking piece just to kind of keep it from shifting. And be careful when you go around the curve. Okay, I am not done yet because I didn't cut, whoa, look at that, it didn't cut all the way through. Now it did. Okay, and now I have to just cut out the top, so I'm shifted a little bit and make sure that it's lined back up, and then cut that top piece. And again, be real careful of all those little fingers, because Santa doesn't cover the trips to the emergency room if you cut yourself. All right, now you have your lining, and you have your outside, which is like 2/3 of the stocking, but you still have a little ways to go. So, you're done with this pattern piece for now. You can set it aside. The next thing you need is your trim. Now, if you're using a print that is directional on your trim, the next step will be really important, but like you wouldn't want to, if I want my stripes to go this way on my stocking, you don't want to cut this way, because that won't work. So from this, I need to cut a piece that is 4.5 inches by 17 inches. But I've made a few of these stockings now, and so I've actually changed it just a little bit to make it a little bit easier, since I was doing some dense quilting. This piece will be a little bit bigger than your stocking, so when you go to sew it all together, it can have a little bit extra, which would result in like a little bump, which no one is going to notice. Santa will still bring you presents if it happens. But if it's going to drive you a little crazy, then I actually would reduce this cut measurement just by like 1/4 of an inch. So instead of cutting 17 inches, I'm going to cut 16 3/4 by 4 1/2. And I keep trying to line my ruler up with this stripe, but as any fans of Dr. Seuss will know, this stripe is not a straight stripe. So you can try and line your ruler up with it, but it won't line up straight. So you just do your best. All right, 4 1 2 3 4 1/2, and cut, and cut. Now you need 2 pieces that are at 4 1/2 by, I'm cutting 16 3/4. My ironing board is getting in my way of my long ruler. It's okay. I'll carry on. Okay. Okay, so now I have my 2 pieces, but I'm not done, because as anyone who has ever hung a stocking knows, it's important to have something to hang the stocking with. So you could use a ribbon, but if you don't want to use a ribbon and you have a little bit of extra, I like this to be, I was cutting it about 9 inches long by 2 inches and then folding it down and making my own little hanging hook, and then it coordinates really nicely. So from this extra scrap, I'm just going to cut 2 inches by 9 inches. And you could make that a little bit less depending on what kind of hook you're hanging it on, or you could leave it off if you're just going to like sit your stocking on the ground, but I don't really know how that's going to work, because they have to be hung by the chimney with care. Okay, so now we have that little extra piece. Now we are so close to being done, because we have our lining, we have our outside of our stocking, we have our cuff, but we don't have our trim, so we have to get our trim. And that is coming from the same fabric as the lining in this case. And this just needs to be a 2 inch by the same length that you cut this one, so I'm cutting it 16 3/4. And it actually just occurred to me that maybe I don't want my strap to be this, because then it would blend in with my cuff, so I'm actually going to recut that. So 2 inches by 16 3/4. And clearly we're one of those people where we buy the extra fabric because you can't run out. Anyway, okay, 2 inches, 16 3/4. Oh, and actually, because I just cut that with the 2 layers of fabric instead of 1, now I can just, I only need 1 of that, and I'll just cut this one down to the 9 inches. Okay. Now we have everything we need. So, because we're going to be changing out our feet a few different times, we're going to do everything that we can do with our first 1/4 inch seam allowance, first. So I'm going to set my needle so that it's in the 1/4 inch position, and first things first, you're going to line up your,
Move the soak bottle. It's just in the way.
You're going to line up your cuff with your trim with your cuff. So it should be 2 of the same, 1 thin in the middle. And you'll see in the directions, it gives you some instructions for if you're using something directional. Make sure that you put them the directions it states, because what happens is that you want these dinosaurs to be upright instead of like upside down. I mean, I guess if you want them to be upside down and that's the look you're going for, then you could do whatever you'd like. That's the beauty of sewing, and especially making your own stuff. So for now, line one side up here, long sides together, and sew using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I'm feeling like after this seam we should do another Santa joke. There's a really good one that I read, because I did read them a little bit before this started. All right, so now you have this attached, and you're just going to press, and I'm using just a little bit of flatter, which is a spray starch alternative to help keep my fabric nice and crisp and behaving properly. All right, now you have this, and you're going to sew this seam to here. But first, Santa joke. Why did Santa bring 22 reindeer to the store?
I don't know. Why?
Because he wanted to buy, or what he wanted to buy cost around $20, but just in case it was more, he brought some extra dough. I feel like it's funny because you can't see Yael's face when I read her these answers, but it's mostly like, which just makes it better.
Oh, man.
Okay, now we're going to sew that seam. Alright, now if you're working on this project at home, this is a great time to turn on your Christmas music, listen to How the Grinch Stole Christmas, or you know, like the Michael Bublé Christmas album, or whatever else you have. My mom listens to Kenny G. She just has a Kenny G Christmas album, and that's what she listens to all Christmas season. Until we all go, oh my gosh, Mom, I can't listen to Kenny G one more time. Please put on anything else. And then it's usually the Peanuts Christmas album. It's a pretty solid tradition. Okay, so now you have made this big rectangle. Woohoo! Okay, next you're going to fold this in half, wrong sides together, so that it looks like this, and you're going to press. And again, I'm going to use just like a little bit of my soap wash, or soap wash flatter, and give it a press. Okay, and so now I have this, but now the directions are going to tell you this step, where you open it back up even though you just pressed it. And you're going to fold it over like this. And the directions say 1/4 inch seam allowance, but since I've been making it and I've been trying to avoid the little puckers that I've been getting since I'm quilting my outsides, I'm going to use a 1/2 inch seam allowance. So I'm actually going to now move my needle all the way over to the other side of the needle spot so that I have a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Okay, and I'm going to sew. And I go back just a little bit at the beginning of my stitches so that it stays, so that it doesn't pop open if I put pressure on it, since the glue will be turning those pieces. Okay, so now you've stitched this together, and you know that you've stitched it together because you can almost wear it like a really big Christmas sweater sleeve. But now what you're going to do is just kind of gently fold it so that it goes with the right side out again. And now you'll see that where you had pressed it before, kind of the fabric just wants to go back to that space. So it nicely is pressed here, and the ends line up, and that's lovely. And you can see where the cuff is coming together and the trim, and then you're just going to set that aside. Okay, while we're at it, this step, if you're using a ribbon, you don't have to do this, but I'm just going to take this, I'm going to fold it in half and press, and then fold it in again and again to meet that, and then fold it in half so that you end up with all your seams enclosed in like this, what, 1/2 inch piece of fabric. So real quick, and if you have,
Sorry, someone's asking if the video will be available later. I think it'll only be available for a limited time on Instagram, but it'll be uploaded onto our Facebook page, so you can check it out there.
And so you can see I'm going to hold it together. Now if you're using your fingers to do this instead of a tool, just be careful because it doesn't feel good when you iron your fingers. Yeah. So once you've gave it a little press at first, like this, then I'm going to fold it in half again and press, and then take it over to the sewing machine to make this permanent. Yeah, Elle, do you know what time it is?
No.
I feel like it's time for a Santa joke.
I don't think so.
I do. I think it's time for a Santa joke. Let's see. What kind of bike does Santa Claus ride?
I don't know. What kind?
A Harley Davidson. This is a good website of Santa jokes. I don't know. Just Google. All right. Now I'm going to sew on either side of this little piece, just so that it looks symmetrical, but also so that it stays together. And yeah.
Someone's asking about your pedal, and because you're standing and sewing, is there anything special about it? Or the pedal on your sewing machine. People aren't used to seeing somebody standing, so.
No, it's just a regular foot pedal. I have the same machine at home, and I do have a pedal upgrade that it has a thread cutter attachment that goes right onto your pedal, so all you have to do when you're ready to cut your thread is just stomp right on that. And you get really used to having that. You forget that you have it, and then you try and do it here, and it doesn't work when there isn't a pedal. So you have to remember to press the button on the machine. All right, so now you've stitched this together. It looks beautiful. You decide what side you're going to use. I think I'm going to use this side because it has more dots. I'm going to fold it in half like this, and then just kind of stitch the ends closed. And I'm stitching less than 1/4 inch since I know the final seam allowance is going to be 1/2 inch, and I don't want this thread to show. So look at that. You made like a nice bracelet. Gift that to people. I don't know that they would like it, but set that aside too. Next, you're going to take your lining pieces, and with right sides together, you are going to sew starting at the top all the way around, but leave the top open. So if you are a pinner, you could pin these pieces together. If you are not, you could just go for it.
Elizabeth is not a pinner.
I'm not a
You
pinner.
can't.
So when I say pin, you know I'm serious. Alright, so we're just zooming right along. And so when you're just working with 2 layers like this, it's not a big deal. Like if you're just using your regular foot, but sometimes when you get to a lot of layers, like when you're assembling the stocking, it can be really nice to use your walking foot because it helps feed the fabric evenly through the top and the bottom. I'm not being super fastidious about my seam allowance on the bottom. Like if it's not quite a 1/2 inch, it's okay. Well, in my opinion, it's okay. It looks pretty good. I didn't go and measure all the way around. You do not turn this right side out, so just leave this as is and set aside. And now comes the fun part that you've all been waiting for. The way to make it look like a quilted stocking is to actually do some quilting. So there's a few different options that you can take when you're quilting. Let's see, it's easier to see here. So on this one, I did like a really tight grid. You can see it?
On Instagram, I don't think I can really zoom
Okay,
in.
so there's like a grid quilting, and for this one I just used my walking foot. I did the same thing over here, but it's kind of hard to see. This one, we tried out like a all over swoopy thing with some stars, and over here with some wavy lines, and over here a bigger straight line grid also with a walking foot. So if you're not comfortable free motion quilting, this is a really great place where you can just play with your walking foot and get some fun quilting designs. But if you're going to free motion quilt, you can get really extreme. So in this one, because it's cats, I wrote some free motion quilt writing that says cats rule. And there's a meow on this side, but you really can't see that. And there's also a really terrifying cat head that I tried to quilt into it, and I am not an artist in that regard. It doesn't look good. So this is so easy, and it's a really fun way to practice free motion quilting because it's so small. I mean, that's super forgiving, right? You could have your kids help you, or in my case, I'm going to bring in my super special helper, Ulrika, who has free motion quilted for exactly 1/2 stocking in her entire life. She did this side. Ulrika is fantastic at garment sewing and was interested in figuring out how free motion quilting worked, and so she's going to free motion quilt. Now, you have your batting, and so if you're doing this the correct way where you have your tools, it would probably be good to spray baste or to pin baste your pieces onto the batting. But we don't have pins here right now, and so we're just going to let Ulrika go for it and just be like, oh, Ulrika, don't mess that up. But she won't. Now, you can see there's a little bit of extra room around here. Now, if you're free motion quilting on your machine, you need to do a few things first. Where's my little screwdriver? You need a little screwdriver, which I brought from home. I think it's really cute. I buy little screwdrivers everywhere I go because I think that they're handy and they go with my sewing machine, and why not? So you're actually going to come in, going to unscrew the screw that's holding on your regular foot and foot holder. That's the technical term, obviously, foot holder. And we're going to attach our free motion quilt foot. If you wanted to use your rocking foot, you would put your rocking foot on right now. So we're just going to put this foot on, and we're going to tighten the screw. Okay. Now the other thing on this machine is that it comes with a few different kinds of needle plates. So you have a straight line needle plate where the needle only goes through one spot, or the standard plate, which has an open, like a almost happy face, so the needle can move around and do decorative stitches. And I found, and my machine cleaner gentleman has told me, and actually wrote me a sticky note that he taped to the inside of my sewing machine that I have to look at every time I try and free motion quilt, that says, use this foot plate. I say, okay, so I'm doing it. I'm using the foot plate. I'm going to just replace this foot plate, and it's super easy. It just clips right in. And so now Ariga's ready to free motion quilt. Okay, Ariga. You know how to do it, right? Okay.
So just put the foot down.
Well, you have to
and
put
I
the-
go for it. Well, yeah.
All right, so she's going to just,
Do I need to start from the top?
you can start kind of from anywhere. But when you're free motion quilting, make sure that you start off the edge so that the thread has a few spots to kind of catch before, and then move it on over into your project. If you are doing this with kids, it's always good to also maybe baste the project down around all the edges so that they can do it without it getting tangled. And in the meantime, I think we have room for some Santa jokes. All right. What do you get if you cross Father Christmas with a detective?
I don't know.
Santa Claus! That one was okay. All right. What do elves call it when Father Christmas claps his hand at the end of a play?
Oh, I don't know.
Santa Claus! That one deserves a round of Santa Claus.
She's a little busy.
All right, let's see.
Pretty good.
When Santa is on a beach, what do the elves call him? Come on, yeah, you got this one.
I don't know.
Sandy Claus.
Oh.
Okay, you'll definitely know this one because I watched this movie the other day. What is Santa's dog's name?
Santa Claus.
Santa Claus. What did Mrs. Claus say to Santa Claus when she looked up in the sky?
I don't know, Elizabeth. What?
Looks like reindeer. That one was really good.
I think everything's done
With one.
with one.
All right. Now move on to the second one.
Do we need to cut or?
No, you can. Yeah, so you could cut them off or you could leave them attached at the same time. Where's our rotary cutter? Oh, here it is. Okay. We're just going to... Okay, you cut that other one, and in the meantime, I'm going to cut this out and tell you more jokes.
Maybe you don't do
Where-
this at the same time, since you should be looking down.
Where does Santa stay when he's on vacation?
I don't know, where?
At a ho-ho hotel!
Rico's face.
Oh, man. 8 more pages, guys. Got a lot
How do
of
we
pages.
get quilt faster, please? We're on the way.
Okay.
If anyone has any questions, feel free to, post them below, or if you have any jokes.
Like my foot.
Yeah.
If you have any jokes you'd like to share.
Why did Santa put a clock on his sleigh?
I don't know why.
Because he wanted to see time fly. Why does Santa go down the chimney?
I don't know.
Because it suits him.
Okay, are you sure you're not done? I think that maybe
Why
you
did
are.
Santa get a parking ticket last Christmas Eve?
I don't know, Elizabeth.
He was making a special delivery and left his sleigh in a snow parking zone. She She's trying really hard not to laugh. You can't see it, but she's struggling. On the inside, she's busting the guts.
Look, and Enrica's almost done. Oh, she's done. Look at that. No more time for jokes.
There you go.
Okay, well, you cut this one out.
Wait,
How does
super
Santa...
close?
No, just, as good as you can. How does Santa sing the alphabet?
Oh goodness. How?
A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, O, P. What? Like ho, 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 but oh.
If you have to explain it, it's not
It's still funny. All right.
The machine is a Janome
8900.
8900.
And it is wonderful. It does a lot of great stuff. It can straight stitch, zigzag stitch, decorative stitches, programming. It's smart and it's lovely. I don't have problems with it at home, and I adore it. So, okay. Now that you have successfully free motion quilted your stocking, thank you, special guest Ariga, we are ready to move on, which means that we need to change out our foot again. Okay, so going back to this, I'm going to unscrew this foot, put it away, find where I put my other foot, which at home usually means like moving piles of fabric looking for that thing that I know I just set right there for a second 2 minutes ago and now it's gone forever, So dig a little, find your foot, put it back on. Hooray! And the last thing is to change out your needle plate back to your other needle plate. You could still use this one if you were just doing a straight stitch right down the middle, but I just go back to this one because it's the one that is standard and default, and so I just do it. You know what, sometimes I lift that because it makes it a whole lot easier to put your needle plate on. All right, now you're ready to go back. Because you are using a 1/2 inch seam allowance, go back to your 1/2 inch seam allowance marking. Okay. And now with your right sides together, you're going to sew your stocking all the way around, but don't sew the top because you want to be able to put presents in. And if the top is sewn shut, you can't do that. Okay, let's do this. And this is kind of the stage where if you were going to put your walking foot on to help go through all these layers, it's not a bad idea, but as you can see, it's not necessarily, like you don't have to. You can get by without it. Now the directions also say to trim your or grade your seams down to 1/4 inch and then notch at all the places where it's going to turn, which does help the stocking grow when you put presents in it. I haven't been doing that on my other ones because it'll work if you don't, but but for this video I'm going to do it the right way. So I'm notching my seams. But I'm not going to trim my seam allowances because I think it's okay.
Someone's asking if you have to have a certain foot for free motion quilting, or if
you do need a free motion quilt foot. The one that I like to use has this basket on it, which helps push the fabric so that it pushes the fabric out so that you can kind of avoid bunching. But they don't all look like this. There's other versions. I don't know, this is the one I use, but I have a feeling you could do something similar with this, but this foot might also have a different purpose. But I stick with this one, and what I would recommend doing is going to whatever dealer or whoever services your machine, and I would ask them what foot you should use for your specific machine for free motion quilting, and they'll set you up. My people told me to use that foot with the basket, so for the last like 7 years, that's what I've been using. All right, now that you've notched your stocking, if you want to grade your seams, go ahead too. You're going to turn it inside out. So you put your arm in and just grab the bottom of the toe and then flip. It's very exciting. This is a thrilling moment where you get to see your stocking really start to come together and all that work just starts feeling like it's really paid off. Okay, so this stocking is really delightful because it has a nice shape. Okay, now we're getting to the really fun part. You're going to put your lining inside the stocking, but you're not going to turn it inside out. So reach your hand in. I like to kind of grab the corner of the toe and then put it into the other outside part and kind of try and line up the toe, and then move my hand over and line up the heel. And then once I kind of feel it laying flat inside, then I work up to the top and I line up my seams. And that's when I know that the lining is put incorrectly. And at this point I do want to just tuck a little pin so that it holds the same spot. It doesn't move around while I'm working. And I'm just going to pin it at the two seams because we're not done yet. So, so right now you should have what looks like a finished stocking with like a big raw edge with batting coming out of it. And yeah. Okay, the next step is to take your cuff, and with the raw edges up, you're going to put this inside the lining. So inside the lining, but not in between the lining and the exterior. Line up your seam with the back of your stocking, and then before you pin it, take the little ribbon or the thing that you made and put this in between the lining layer and between the cuff layer, which is the red layer here. Now once you've got that all sandwiched together, I would just readjust that pin to hold it all in place. That pin is now holding like a ton of layers all at once. And now you're going to work your way around your stocking and pin all the way around, and make sure that your lining isn't falling down, and make sure that your cuff's edges are staying at the same level too, that they're not shifting. Okay. And I'm just got to my other pin, so I'm readjusting my pin. You will be glad you pinned later though, because it makes it a lot easier to assemble it all. Okay. Now that we've gone all the way around and we've pinned all the way around, it should look like that. Okay, now we're going to sew with a 1/2 inch seam allowance all the way around the top. Don't sew it shut, that would be a bummer. If your machine has a free arm where you can take this part off and it just has enough room for this to go around, that makes your life just so much easier. And I've made 10 stockings now, and this is the first one that I thought maybe I should do that for, so it's never too late. The only thing is that you can't see if it's bunching underneath to help like adjust it, but I think it's fine. I'm gonna just power through. When you get to the spot that has all those layers, you'll know because your machine will start working harder there. When you get to that, I back stitch and then go forward again a little bit just to keep it all in. And there's going to be a lot of pressure on that seam too, since that's where you're hanging your stocking from, and you know Santa's going to bring you a lot of presents, and they're going to be heavy, and you do not want your stocking to fall down. So, whoa. If you drop a pin, pick it up, because it's not fun to find it with your foot later. All right. And when I get back to where I started, I just go back a few stitches and then forward, cut my thread, and then I have this seam. Now, this section is going to be exposed. No, it will be exposed, but it's not going to be something you're going to be touching all the time. So if it doesn't bother you, leave it as is. If it bothers you, I would just go to a zigzag stitch and just zigzag real quick all the way around it. So I'm just going to do that real quick. Also, because I like to use the zigzag stitch on this machine, I think it's fun. Alrighty. And this is going to keep fabric from fraying. If you're using like a linen or something, then I'd probably really do this, just so that it finishes your seams nice. Alright. Now that I've zigzag stitched, it's time for the big reveal. You reach in, you pull out the cuff. It's looking like this now, which looks kind of funny. But now you just fold it over and just like that, you have a gorgeous Christmas stocking. And on this side, the Grinch is facing up. So actually, if you're using a tossed fabric, I would be careful to make sure that maybe you don't do what I did and just look at one side. I would cut one at a time so that you can be sure that both sides are up. But this is a good way because now you always know what the front of your stocking is, because on the back, the Grinch is like, whoa. And then, where did it go? Then you just put lots of presents in it, like all the candy canes. And it's easy as pie. So we hope you make a lot of Christmas stockings and show us all of your fun, inventive fabric combinations. And join us again in 2018 when It's So Friday continues. Have a good Christmas.